Well, welcome everyone, the small group of us, to the East Coast Farm Environment Plan Mapping Workshop. Just the usual rules of engagement. Everyone's on mute at the moment, but as Rena has already, flick your comments and questions up in the chat box, and we'll get to those either along the way, or we'll answer some of the bigger, meatier questions at the end if there are some. The intention of this webinar is that we all know farm environment plans are impending. They're coming at us. We don't know when, and we don't know exactly what they will entail. But you know, the best place to start really is we all grew up with farm maps, black and white farm maps on our walls at home, and we all grew up with some form of farm plan as well, albeit not in a categorized structure like they're expecting us to have. So this webinar is really about giving us the tools to go from simple Google Maps if we want to, through to some more technical tools as well as we progress, and if we have the skill sets and want to do a really amazing job of our farm mapping. So farm mapping is probably the best starting point to really channel our thinking around farm environment plans. Dianne is the GIS expert over here that we're going to be yarning with today. So kia ora, Dianne. She's coming from Whangarei, but has spent a bit of time recently on the East Coast.
Cool, kia ora, Sam. So I'll pick up from here and I'll flick through the slides. So today we're going to talk about farm environment plans, as Sam has just mentioned. And then I'm going to talk about the technology and have a live demonstration. So we've got a slide here about what is a farm environment plan, and as Sam said, nobody really knows at this stage. We're just kind of grasping at straws. What should be in a farm environment plan? Well, a part of a farm environment plan is your farm map. So that's what I'm going to run through today. So what should you put on your farm map? So you can start with your farm boundary, your property boundary, your land management units, waterways such as rivers, streams, watercourses, water bodies such as farm dams, lakes and wetlands, riparian zones, fence lines adjacent to your waterways and your water bodies, stock crossings, tracks and races, and your critical source points such as your overland flow paths, your yards, animal holding areas, standing pads, feed out areas, effluent application areas, and erosion prone areas. So there's a few tools that you can use to create your farm map. So I've pulled out 4 free mapping tools, which are Google My Maps, Google Earth Pro, ArcGIS Earth, and QGIS. And these range in skill level from basic to advanced. So with Google My Maps, you can share your map, you can print your map, you can download your features, your map is online, and you can access it via Google Maps mobile app on your phone or your tablet. So you don't need to take a paper map out in the field, out on the farm with you. You can view it on your phone. So this webinar will focus on using Google My Maps for creating your farm map. This is because Google My Maps is a simple and easy to use tool where you do not need to download any software or save your files to your computer. All of your data is saved in Google, and you can view your map, as I said, on the Google Maps app on your mobile phone. And most of you are familiar with using Google Maps to find and locate towns, businesses, get directions, etc., which is great because Google My Maps is pretty much the same, except you can actually add your features. You can put points, lines, and polygons onto the map. If you would like to create an accurate map where accurate locations are vital, where you can measure the length of fence lines or paddock areas, I would recommend looking at the other applications, particularly QGIS. Google My Maps will meet the needs of creating a farm plan that outlines your significant infrastructure and natural features for our planning purposes. So the next step up from Google My Maps is Google Earth Pro and ArcGIS Earth. So Google Earth Pro and ArcGIS Earth are pretty similar applications. Google Earth Pro, you can add and edit your features. You can save your map as an image. You can email your map, print your map, input data from different formats, and export your data to KMZ and KML. You can also view your map in 3D. So you can see this ridgeline in the foreground here. Nice little hill. And if I flick back to Google My Maps, this is the same ridgeline along here. So this is a 2D map. Google My Maps flattens everything and thinks that everything is flat. Whereas in Google Earth, you can have the option of actually viewing your farm in 3D. So the requirements of Google Earth is you need a computer and you need to download and install the software. You need internet access, and the skill level is from basic to intermediate. So you can use the basic tools such as just creating your points, your lines and your polygons, or you can go more advanced and start playing around with the 3D functionality, importing data and doing like little tours around your farm. So it's pretty cool. So ArcGIS Earth is similar to Google Earth in that you can add and edit your features, you can save your map as an image, you can email your map, print your map, you can import data from different formats, but the difference is you can add data feeds and web services. So what this means is that a lot of the regional councils are use the ArcGIS platform. So their web maps are using ArcGIS, and all the layers in the web maps are a web service, and you can get those web services and import them into your web map. So why would you want to do that? Well, you'll be able to pick up, for example, the regional plan and see how your farming practices are, and you can have a look and see what the regional plan rules and regulations are and how they might affect your farming practices. And like Google Earth, you can also see view your farm in 3D. So here's the same ridgeline. And also you've probably noticed that the satellite image, the aerial photography, is different in ArcGIS Earth compared to Google Earth. And that's because they have different data sources for their satellite images. Google's got their own satellites. ArcGIS Earth, these ones here are actually come from the regional councils. So I'll flip back to Google Earth so you can see the difference in the aerial photography. And this is ArcGIS Earth. So again, the requirements are you need a computer, you need to download the software, you need internet access, and the skill level is from basic to intermediate. So you can use the basic tools such as creating your points, lines, and polygon farm features, or you can use the more intermediate where you import those web services, those data feeds. So the next step up is QGIS. So just straight away, you can see that it is quite a different application altogether. It's got so many more tools, so many more different menus, and it can be overwhelming when you use it for the first time. QGIS is a free high-level GIS application used for mapping and data analysis and cartography. However, unlike the Google and the ArcGIS Earth applications, your map needs to be built from scratch, adding each layer to the map. And the concept is much like a Word document. When you open Word, you have a blank screen. When you open QGIS, you have a blank screen. You then need to compose your map by adding each layer into the map. Much like Word, you compose your document by writing your paragraphs and your sentences. QGIS is a powerful application enabling you to add and edit features, save the map as an image, print map, import and export data. The other thing with QGIS is you can bring in LiDAR data. So a lot of the regional councils have flown LiDAR, so you can bring in the contours, which could be quite handy for planning purposes. The other thing you can bring is drone aerials. So if you or your children or you know someone who's quite handy with a drone, you can import the photography out of the drone into QGIS. And you can also add data feeds and web services. So the requirements of QGIS is you need a computer, you need to download and install the software, and the skill level is advanced. So in the chat, I'll paste in the links to those applications. So you can copy those out and have a look and install the software and compare them. So the next part of the presentation will show you how to use Google My Maps to create your farm map. You can search for Google My Maps in Google, or you can enter the URL that I've got here up on the slide. But first, you do need a Google account. So if you've got a Gmail email address, you have a Google account. So once you've gone to the link on the screen here, sign in with your Google account, and then you're presented with a screen. You may not have these thumbnails. Click on Create New Map. Click on, you're then given a little map with a side panel here. So click on Untitled Map and give your map a title. You can also give your map a description. So you can see I've called this one Smith's Farm Environment Plan, and it's a farm environment plan for Smith's Farm. So, and then underneath that is this layer. So you can rename the untitled layer to existing or current. And this is where you'll add in your existing or your current farm features, such as your farm boundary, waterways, planting, erosion-prone land, etc. But how can you map your features when you can't actually see them? So Google My Maps defaults to Street View. So you can see here, I can just see a little road, a little pond, and a river, but I can't see anything else. So how do I map my features? Over on the left here, there's a base map gallery. So you drop down the base map selector and select satellite image. And now you can see your features. Now you can see your farm. So you start by adding a line feature, and a good starting point, once again, is your farm boundary, and then your waterways, water bodies, your farm race, stock crossings. So you draw in your features, you give each a name and a colour, and you theme the colours up. So I like to make all the waterways blue, so all the streams and watercourses, all the farm dams, I'll make them blue. And then for the critical source areas, I'll colour them relating to the level of risk. So low risk might be yellow, moderate risk might be orange, and high risk might be red. But again, there are no standards around this. It's just a guideline of how you might colour in your features. So once you've mapped all your current farm features, we can add a new layer and call it Planned 2021-2022 for all your planned works. And in this layer, you might add planned fencing, planned planting, etc. So as before, you draw your features, give them a name and a colour. And you can see over on the left here, I've got this new group called Future. So this is where you might, as you're going through mapping your farm, there might be things that you'd like to do on the farm, but you don't have the budget for, or you don't have the time frame for it. Or there might be things that the regulations, regional plan, or the national policy statements coming out might require you to do it in the future. So you can map those in and put them into your future layer. Google automatically saves your map and any changes to it as you go. And your map is saved online in your Google account. But if you'd like to back up your data, you can save it to save it to your computer. You can use this export to KML KNZ tool. And this also makes it easy to email your KNZ data file to a third party if you wish, or if you'd like to collaborate at a catchment level, you can share your KML data. You can print your map to a PDF file for your records as well, and to include on your farm environment plan document. So printing is hit and miss, depending on how many features you've got. Google kind of takes liberty about the scale your map's going to be printed at. So it takes a bit of a fiddling with to get it right. And you can also share your map. So if you want to share your map, I recommend link sharing, enable link sharing rather than public. So if you enable link sharing, that means anyone with the link can open and view your map. But if you enable public, it means everyone on the internet can view your map. But again, it's entirely up to you. So now I'll switch over to the demo. So I've got my Google My Maps up, and you can see I've been quite busy over the last few days with all these farm maps I've created for the webinars. And this is, so you may not have any of these if you haven't created a map before. You may not have any of these little maps, so you'll need to create a new map. So I've created one in advance for today for the Waimata catchment. Waimata catchment.
Like the cheese.
So this is the Waimata catchment, and I've got my little property. So I found this little property that I'd like to show you how you can map your own farm. So as you can see, I can't actually see any features to be able to map. So I drop my base map gallery down and I select satellite image. And the other thing I'll do is I'll turn off my catchment layer because I don't need that now. And then we start mapping in some features. So on the boundary here is that Waimata River. So I've got my property layout and my property boundary in already. I'll add a new layer.
That's Laura Savage's place. She's really active. She's the catchment leader, so it's a good choice. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good choice then.
It is.
So this is where we're going to put all our current features. So I'll just put in, I'll just map in part of the Waimata River. And double click to finish your line. So I'll call this river and I'll give it a color because rivers are blue. So I'll give it blue. And the other thing you can do is you can thicken up the line depending on how major or minor the river is. So I'll make that about that width. And so we can zoom in down here. We can say, okay, well, there's a river there. I'm sure it's fenced, so we'll stick in a fence line. Give it a name and give it a color. Looks like we've got another little stream coming down there. So we'll map that one in as well. And so this is quite a substantial farm that I've actually chosen. So we might want to map our indigenous vegetation that we may have planted along our stream side. So we'll just map that off. So you notice that I chose the draw a line. So how do I make this a polygon? To make it a polygon, you end on the same point that you started and you double click and that closes off the polygon. So
and in that edit function there, I use this quite a lot on farm. And with that little edit function, it's really neat to be able to take notes.
It is.
So for a lot of our points and our polygons, we tend to be, it's a great place to take notes and say that indigenous vegetation there, it's got these types of species, they're this old, or these species of bird are present in it. And it's nice to be able to go back to those notes after a year or 2 years and see it's changed. So
yeah, and you can add photos as well. So
Mm.
if you've got like a you might have, you know, a threatened tree in there, or some species in there, and you can take a photo of that and upload that in there as well. So yeah, you can grab, and you can also get the size of your area. So even though I've mapped this in quite rough, you can spend some time and map it in with some detail and get a little bit more accurate. And you can get the area of that polygon is almost 0.9 hectares. And then if you want to fence it off, you've got the perimeter of it, which is 578 meters. So again, it gives you a guideline. It's not accurate, it's not super accurate, but it will give you a guideline. So I did find this area up here, and it looks like, I'm not sure if that's
a coal gas mud volcano.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a major sediment contributor to that waterway, but it's a natural feature as well. So
Yes.
it's naturally occurring, but it's a large feature. And Laura and Jeremy have done quite extensive planting along the uphill side of that, but they can't get plants to stick in the downhill side of it because it's just
It keeps moving.
yeah, it keeps moving.
So would you call that a critical source area?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And there's several of them throughout the catchment as well.
That's really interesting, because I saw that and I was like, it kind of looks like an erosion prone area, but it's just different.
Doesn't quite stack up, eh? But yeah.
No.
Next time you're in Gizzy, you should come up and have a look.
Oh yes, I will, definitely. So we'll map that as a critical source area, and the other thing we'll do is this must be all the planting that they've been doing.
That's mostly older growth Kānuka,
Okay.
but there's a lot of Coprosma underneath it as well. Lots of fruiting species. It's quite cool.
So we can call this regrowth.
Yes.
And then in our notes, we can say Kānuka and give it a colour. I forgot to give it a colour. So trees are green.
But you can also use different greens for different gradings of trees, whether it's regen or old growth native or fenced old growth native.
And you can also make it solid fill or more transparent as well, using a little slider. So it's got some pretty cool features. So you can see, go through your farm, mapping in your features. And once you've mapped in all your current features, then you can add a new layer. And we can call this planned 2021, 2022. And we can say, okay, we're going to try and tackle this area. We want to plant some trees that are going to stick. So we might start on this area here. And you can put notes in here on what you're going to plant. You might start with Kānuka, because that seems to, establish very well. And again, you've got your area, so you can say, okay, I've got half a hectare, so how many trees will I need? How many plants will I need? And you've got your perimeter as well, because if you're going to be doing all this planting, you'll probably want to fence it off to keep the stock out. so they don't eat your new plants. So we'll give that a colour. Turn that off. If we go down here, we might want to put in a stock crossing down here. So we click on our little marker point. And the cool thing with the marker points, the little flag isn't very explanatory of what this is going to be when you're just looking at it. So what you can do is you can go to more icons, and there's this whole library of icons. And I like to make my icons visual so you can see at a glance what it represents. So this is a stock crossing. So I'd like to have a cow, because cows are going to use my stock crossing. And then you can give it a colour as well, brown cow. So that gives you an idea. What's that?
We use that feature like pretty extensively, and it's to map different species we've got on farm. And so we use it extensively for like whio and kiwi and kiriria sightings as well, and you can give them different bird icons.
Oh, yes.
But it's one of the, many of us have applied for the Dot Community Fund and other funds, and it's just a great way of mapping what species are where and mapping them over time. So
Yes.
it's a very simple tool for funders to see visually what you're trying to communicate, which is great.
And the other thing you might want to do, in my previous webinar, they talked about water monitoring. So you might want to add a new layer and call it your monitoring layer. And then here you might put in your water monitoring points. So you might want to do some water quality testing on your farm, and you can put a little photo in there, save that, and we'll give it there's no test tube, so we'll just go for a waterfall to show that that's your water quality sample point. And then you can put in here your results. So depending on what you're monitoring, you might be monitoring your nitrogen levels or your sedimentation or temperature. So you can put in your results in here. So you can say this is your 2021 results, and then next year you can come back and you can put in your 2022 results. And the other thing you can do is you can add another layer. And you might want to use this for your fertilizer planning. And you can say, okay, well, these lower paddocks will have a different fertilizer application rate and probably a different fertilizer than some of the paddocks in the upper part of the farm. So you might put dicalcic, and then you can put in, say, this year you might have applied it at 150 kilos per hectare. And when you come back next year, you can say, well, after your soil quality or your soil testing, you can come back next year and you can say, okay, well, the soils didn't change, so we'll just apply the same rate. Or you could put more on. Nope, not quite 2,000. So you can use it like that as well. So as I go through and I'm adding these new layers and I'm adding my little features to the layers, to know which layer I'm adding my feature to, there's a subtle blue bar on the left-hand side. So on the layer that's got that subtle blue bar, that's the layer that I will be adding my features to. So I can say, we'll fence off this next year or this year. Put that in my plan. Because I'm only interested in the actual outside of it, I can make it transparent because I just want to show the fence. And that's in my plan. So you can go through, map your farm, map all your features. I'll put the property boundary back on. And when Google saves all your changes as you go, but you might want to print your map. So you can select print map, and we'll print it A4, and we'll print it at landscape. And because remember I said it's kind of hit and miss with what comes out, didn't turn on the property boundary. And not all my features are showing. So what you can do is set your map extent. So zoom to what you want to show, and then you can do a screen clipping of what you want and put that into Word. And then the same for your legend. To create a legend, do a screenshot of your legend and put that into Word. And if you want to create a north arrow, north is always up. If you want to share your data to a third party, or you might want to collaborate, you can export it to KML or KMZ. And you've got a choice of exporting out the entire map, or you can select a layer that you want to export out. So if you're doing a collaboration for your catchment group, you might want to just export out your current, because that will show your current planting. Or if the catchment group is trying to collaborate and work out what you're going to do in the next financial year, for example, you can share your planned, export out your planned. You can share your map as well. And remember I said to enable link sharing. And that means anyone with this link can see your map. But if you enable public, it means everyone on the internet can see your map. But that's purely up to you. So I'll turn all those off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my maps. I'm going to create a new map. And this is going to be the Waimata catchment group. And this is going to be a collaboration. So this is something I prepared in advance. So the first thing we want to do is I want to bring in my catchment layer. So I'll do that. But you might want to know, where did I get that catchment layer from? So before I do that, I'll show you where I got that catchment layer from. So this is the FME, this is the Ministry for Environment, MFE data warehouse. And it's got lots of environment data that you can download and add to your map. And it's got data that relates to a lot of the national policy statements as well. So I want my catchment. So I'll search for catchment. You can see there's 62 results for catchment, and we want to limit that to catchment layers. So the catchment that I chose here, the Waimata catchment, is our Order 5 catchment. So I've switched that on. And then what you want to do is you want to draw a little box crop around your catchment, because we only want that one. And you have to register to be able to download. You have to register with the website to be able to download your data. So once I've selected my layer and I've drawn my little box crop, I click download and I select Google Earth KML. And we want to make sure when you do these downloads that they're less than 5 megabytes. Anything more than 5 megabytes, you can't get into Google My Maps. So this is less than 1 megabyte. So that's great. So I'll do accept terms and create download, except I've done this in advance. So we go back into Google My Maps, and on the untitled layer, we go import. And then I grab my catchment, put that in there. And you see when you draw your box crop, you get pieces of the neighbouring catchments. So I don't want those. So I just click on those and I'll delete those because I'm only interested in that catchment. And I want to change that to uniform style because there's only one feature. Now, so this is a collaboration with a few farmers in this catchment, and they have exported out their data files for me. And I can now import them into my map. So we've got farmer number 1. And you can see what they've been doing along the Waimata River. And I'll add another layer. And we'll import another one, farmer number 2. And see what they've been doing. And then I've got farmer number 3. So these ones have been focusing a lot on doing some planting, some riparian planting and fencing off the river. I'll switch my base map to the satellite and I'll make my catchment layer transparent, but I'll thicken up the border. So, so they're working along the Waimata River so that they can improve the downstream water quality. But they've got this big forestry block in the middle that they're a little bit concerned about because they're not quite sure when they're going to harvest their forest and what impact that might have on the river. So we'll put that in as well. So this is the sort of thing that you can work on as a catchment collaboration. So you can, improve the river water quality or just the general well-being of the catchment. So I'll move through that pretty quickly. So if there are any questions, put them in the chat and we'll see. The other thing I'll put in the chat that you might find useful is this link to the MFA data warehouse. So you can copy that out and save that.
I've got one question that I get all the time on this, on my maps. Can you tell us whether you can input GPX files from, say, a Garmin 64 into this mapping software?
Right, it says you can. So if I click on import, it says GPX.
So it's just the same as any other data point.
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
So that means that we can walk around our farms with a handheld GPS and walk true lines and get really accurate data and accurate points. We can map in any of the trapping we're doing on farms. We can map in any of the work we're doing anywhere on the farm where your farm tracks are, get real accurate tracks, etc. And then just get your handheld, plug it into your laptop and flick it straight into here, which is often a lot easier for some folks than drawing lines on maps.
Yes, most definitely. Especially, yeah, in terms of accuracy. Yep, definitely. And looking at the scale, you know, some of these farms up here are pretty big. So when you want to map in some accurate, it's really good to get out there with a GPS. So I think I've covered everything off, but I did actually just think just now, I'll go back to my first map in this farm, because I was just thinking when I mapped in that, so for example, that fertilizer that I put in there, and we can put in the notes. The other useful thing is that it gives you the area. So I've said in 2022, we want to apply 200 kilos per hectare. How much fertilizer do I need? And so we get an idea of, you know, this paddock or this area is about 12 hectares. So then we can get an idea of how much fertilizer we need. So I can just carry on through mapping some little tributaries. So Google My Maps is really cool because it's just so easy to use, and it's a good place to start if you're not very confident, if you're not quite sure what you're going to do. You can get practice using Google My Maps, and then if you think, well, actually I want to take it to the next level, you can export out your data to a KML or KMZ, and then you can import that into Google Earth or ArcGIS Earth or even QGIS. So your efforts aren't wasted. So it's a really good place to start, really good place to, you know, to get your eye in on what you want to map, to get your skills up on making your features, mapping your features. So hopefully that helps. You can go away now and start creating your farm maps.
Absolutely. If anyone wants a hand at all, I'm around here in the Tairāwhiti East Coast region, so I'm more than happy to run an in-person tutorial or help with any catchment groups that want this kind of mapping as well. We use it really successfully for some of our catchment groups already. So
that's great.
Is there any other questions for Dianne on this one? Doesn't look like it.
All quiet.
All quiet. Cool.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Sarah's got to go pick the kids up from school. So yeah, thanks for joining us all, and thanks for sharing your knowledge on this one, Dianne. It's really nice to have tools that are at a really accessible level and a really easy level, and ones that do flow through to more technical stuff as we learn as well. So really appreciate your knowledge and supporting NZ Landcare Trust with the FEP mapping workshop. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll just switch back to the slide presentation and our final slide.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks. Yep, there's my contact details there if you need them. Yeah, we'll be in touch, Mark. Cool. Should we hit that on the head, Dianne, and hope everyone has a good afternoon and a great Queen's birthday.
Definitely. Thank you. See ya.